So whatever ideas we have about meditation, techniques or strategies, we can give them a bit of a rest and just sit and be present. No agenda except just sitting, witnessing, observing, being present to the experience of sitting and just being. Noticing the different parts of the body. Making any minor adjustments if we want to sit quietly for a longer period of time. Spine upright, well grounded. Head positioned lightly. So we don't put any strain on the neck muscles. Noticing our general state of mind. And just being patient as the body sits and breathes. If the mind is very unruly, then we can choose an object, something just to help stabilize it a little bit, help it settle. It can be the breath, it can be a point on the body. I like to suggest a lower point in the body. There's so much in our heads during the day. And just noticing our belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. And just being patient. Each out-breath is a letting go, releasing, relaxing. And if the mind does wander off into some drama, some issue in life, you have a choice. You can follow the issue, or you just come back to the present moment, finding that point of attention. If the mind is settled, then you can just open up the field of awareness to include everything that's arising, noticing that one is aware. So being aware of awareness. Just being a spacious space for body sensations, feelings, emotions, thoughts just arise in consciousness, arise in awareness, and change. So we can know a background knowing to everything that we experience, a constant, always present. Just being. Just being present. Just checking in. Bringing our attention back to the present, if it's wandered. Breathing in, breathing out, letting go on the out breath. Sitting quietly, not engaged in any activity, allows us to observe this relentless flow of internal phenomena, of sensations, of thoughts, stories, narratives. And that's precisely why sitting quietly is such a key part of our practice, to switch off the radio of the world of life and tune into the inner world and notice what happens there. There's one common element between the internal and external world, and that's change, relentless flow of phenomena. Sensations come and go, impressions, whether they be visual or auditory or olfactory, come and go. But where is all this coming and going happening? Where is it taking place? It's taking place in the one constant that we have access to and actually are all of the time, which is just present moment awareness. So not only do we have an opportunity to observe the different mind states that arise and cease, we also have an opportunity to be aware that we are aware, that there is a constant. But we get constantly distracted by what arises. There's only attractive things happening. And if we're not watching the television or engaged in an interesting conversation with somebody, the mind can create its own internal stories, its internal film shows. We have plenty of unconscious material which is enough to feed many internal box sets of dramas, of stories, of memories. So this wonderful ability we have, our imagination, allows us to project all sorts of stories on the screen of awareness. We're in a tradition. There's a Buddha Rupa behind me, 2 candles, figure of a Bodhisattva, which you can't see the head of because it's taller than the Buddha Rupa. So we're in the Theravada Buddhist tradition, chanting Theravada chants. Engaged in very simple rites and rituals. It's very easy to make a big thing out of those aspects of this particular tradition. And they do serve a very useful utilitarian function. They create a structure, a frame of reference, always referring to the same ultimate objective, which is enlightenment, waking up, being fully present. And not just being present, but having insight, and really understanding the nature of changing phenomena. Noticing how we get attracted to things or reject, repulsed from things. We're in this constant dynamic with experience, avoiding the unpleasant and going for the present. So easily getting distracted and passing judgment on oneself for having been distracted because we have an idea of how we should be. So it's a struggle. Consciousness awakening is a struggle. It's painful often, discomforting. It's part of the package, really. And all the likes and dislikes that we experience over time start finding a context, which is why developing a regular process, regular practice of mindfulness is the best investment we can be making in our life. The 5 hindrances are essentially all those mental, emotional, reactive habits that prevent us from just really deeply being present. But there is a wonderful reward with longer term practice, that it just becomes more natural. One has a sort of, literally one finds a refuge in everyday life. One can just stop, pause, and just reconnect with the big picture. One can have an early morning sit, and it's like, I don't know what to compare it to, actually. Just so deeply relaxing, just matter of fact. And that's the beauty of the heart of Buddhist teaching and practice. It's like this. No idealistic beliefs, no idealistic expectations. It's just simply acceptance of things as they are, as they're experienced. It's so relaxing. One doesn't have to do anything. One just sits, observes, witnesses. But to get, and I'm using sort of the verb to get as if one's obtaining something, to wake up, to be present, allow this reactive organism that we exist in just to simply be and accept the changing nature of phenomena, allows us to connect and just be present to experience. We experience just peace, which is priceless. Can't buy it anywhere, can't trade in it. Bitcoins and peace. So it goes beyond belief, goes beyond ceremonies, beyond ideals. It's just so matter of fact. And as such, it's just absolutely universal. It doesn't exclude anything. It allows everything that arises to arise, just to be. But there is what one could call a sort of purification process of observing and witnessing the grasping that we do, the pushing away that we do. And eventually allows us to wake up to the fact that we don't have to struggle. But actually we're attuning ourselves with nature, with the flow of life, by not taking it personally, experiencing it individually as an individual, but not making an unnecessary drama out of the experience. This allows us to be open, friendly, kind, non-judgmental of others. Judgments may arise, but we don't follow them, we don't believe in them. We're just able to witness opinions and views. We're able to experience different states of mind. But our awareness of those states of mind is completely open, completely neutral. Awareness doesn't take any positions, doesn't pass any judgments. Judgments arise in awareness, but awareness is just noticing judgment or opinion, like or dislike. Awareness doesn't feel like or dislike. Like or dislike just arises in the knowing. So just practicing this witnessing role, this right now it's like this, allows us to find a point which is untouched by any of this, just simply witnessing. And it doesn't make us alienated. It's not a form of dissociation, of cutting off from life. Actually, it allows us to be present to life. It sort of sounds perhaps very remote and very distant, but it's not. It's very, very connected. And it's expressed and experienced in the Brahma Viharas, which is an intense experience of other people's suffering and the feeling of compassion for their suffering, feelings of mudita, or empathy, joy at other people's happiness and well-being, having a kindly, friendly, open, accepting disposition towards others, and the prized jewel of an awakened mind, which is equanimity. Being able to accept the suffering, not agree with it, not support it, but just to know suffering and know how existence is full of suffering, including our own personal life stories. Will always have an element of suffering, which starts with the birth process of just being born. Pain to the mother, pain to the baby, must be quite terrifying. I don't remember being born, but it must have been a pretty traumatic experience coming into bright lights, having suddenly to start breathing, being slapped on the bottom to elicit a cry. All the powerful emotions one must be exposed to at that moment, as the parents, hopefully it's a successful birth. Joy, excitement, fear, trepidation. And suddenly another human being is in the world, and it happens to be this particular body that we find ourselves in. And then there's life. Each one has a narrative. And the happy and sad and difficult states come and go, whether it be not having milk when one wants it, preferring one's mother's milk to the bottled milk that we might be being fed. And then, of course, childhood or adolescence, all the entangled relationships we end up finding ourselves in. And then one sees the sense behind a tradition, any tradition really, that encourages some reflection, some trying to make sense of this experience of life, of existence. A tradition such as the Buddhist one, which is one of the oldest, still existing, continues this tradition of thought, reflection, teachings, pointings, is a wonderful resource to tap into. And certainly coming across an institution such as a good monastery with good teachers, good practice, it's like a beacon. Really. It's just something in the world which points to something both beyond and yet including the world, which is of course fully realized awakening. And what is wonderful about it is it allows one to connect with people who have similar understanding, similar interests of improving their understanding, of realizing their real nature, and that can transcend all traditions, not only different Buddhist traditions, but one can find very, very fine, refined individuals in the Christian tradition, in the Muslim tradition, in the Jewish tradition. All the main book religions have some remarkable individuals. But what is key is to know the truth, know the way things are for oneself, as it refers to in the chant, to be realized individually by the wise. So we have to break out of collective mentality, benefit from the collective aspect that is wholesome, whether it be group chanting or group practice. But at the same time, be very aware that it's an individual journey that we're on. An individual journey reflecting a universal process of awakening. To truth, to the way things are, which just then allows for a real integration into the world, being in the world but not of it. So those are the reflections that come to mind. I don't know if anybody has any questions or would like to add their own thoughts or reflections.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course, Stephen.
You mentioned being aware of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder whether you could say something about that, and whether it's something that just develops as we practice, or whether you recommend any particular practice.
Mm-hmm. So I'll just repeat Stephen's question to expand a little bit on awareness of awareness, being aware of awareness, and is it something that that develops with practice? Yes, grammatically it sounds strange to say being aware of awareness, but maybe if the words were a little bit different, it becomes a bit more obvious. We know when we're aware. There's a knowing. There's that background knowing of how things are in the moment. So it's knowing that we're aware, knowing that we're conscious. To do that, we have to be alive, we have to exist. But there is a knowing of existence. Each one of us now is knowing that we're listening to a conversation or to my words and the question, and thinking about the question. So there's that background knowing which is always present. And it's an opportunity like this to sort of, just as when I first came across this whole formulation, it's not, oh, yes, I am aware. There is awareness. And by constantly having this desire to sort of make sense of things, well, what is this awareness? What is it? It's like, and this is where Vichara comes in investigation, inquiring into, I know that I'm aware. Is that all there is to it? Yeah, that's all there is to it. But we're so conditioned to looking for fulfillment in objects and things and ideas and people and careers and whatever it may be. We're missing out on not being aware that we're experiencing, not knowing. And so, well, how one could say, well, how boring? Well, it's not boring. Actually, life becomes phenomenally okay. Because boring is just a state of mind that comes and goes. But we know when we're bored. So if we focus on the knowing, we start realizing that knowing is the only thing that's real. But what we do know, what we know, is changing all of the time. And we can never find happiness in things that are changing all the time. It's impossible. We may find happiness for a month, a year, sometimes with some people, maybe many, many years. But whatever we find happiness in, if it's a thing, an object, a state of mind, eventually it will change, it will fall apart. But the knowing of what we're experiencing is constant. It's the same when we were being born, when we're 3, when we're 5, when we're 6. At any stage in life, there is a knowing, until we kick the bucket and we're no longer present, no longer existing. So one could say, yes, it comes with practice. But what comes with practice? It's like a gradual revealing as things become more obvious. So yes, it comes with practice, but actually it's present before we start practicing. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Yeah. So right now we're sitting in silence, except for my voice. But even as we sit in silence, there's a knowing. Each one will be aware of one's particular sensations, whether one's sitting comfortably or not comfortably, upright, slouched. So there's all this sensory phenomena which is known, this is being known. And then there's also the thoughts that are arising. And we can step back and say, oh, I'm thinking. Is it I that I'm thinking? They're just thoughts coming. So the Buddhist perspective is that there is no I. There's just experience. But we personalize it and call it an I that belongs to me, it's mine, it's me. But if we start looking at what that me actually is, there is no me. It's just a state of mind, a belief, a conditioned perception. Nothing wrong with it, it's just knowing it for what it is. It's just a perception, conditioned by experience. I have likes and dislikes, but I don't have to be dominated by them. most of us are, until with the practice of relinquishing, which is obviously every spiritual tradition has an element of not overindulging, one learns how to deal with greed, with wanting things, and one with this capacity to witness and know and reflect and contemplate. We know that if we grasp for these things and get them, they only give so much satisfaction. And if we overindulge, we don't feel good at all. So we learn the hard way. Thank you. If you'd like to ask a question, just unmute yourself if you're online. I think you have that ability. You don't have to ask the host, the co-host, to unmute you. Thank you.
Hi, Nick.
Hello, hi. I'm not.
Hi.
Who's speaking?
Nikki, hi.
Nikki, hi.
Hi. I was interested in this overindulging and what you're saying, overindulging and probably negativity. I see that in myself. I see that in other people, like a lot of rage or anger, and it's quite. I probably grew up with it, a lot of it, upbringing and witnessing it, and I'm now. I see it in myself now as well. But I like what you said about indulging in it, but it's quite hard. I think I've got insight, but it's quite hard to stop that trigger reaction, I find, in myself. And I notice it in other people. For example, I parked too close to a car one week in an evening, and she just shouted at me, came from nowhere in the dark, just rage that I parked too close to her. And it's and I could see where she's coming from. I understood it because I can see that in myself. Not that I would do that, but I was wondering how you stopped, how you deal with that kind of trigger reaction. Well, I don't shout at people in the street, but I just thinking I have a tendency to irritability with close ones, but I like what you said about not dwelling on it. But it's quite hard to not make an issue and move on quickly. I find.
Well, you're spot on. You're in the heart of practice, the heart of a transformative process, where as a result of your self-awareness, you're aware of how you're reacting, and it doesn't feel good. You've identified where some of it started. It usually does start when we're young, or some previous experiences condition us to be one way or another. Those are our personal characteristics, personal qualities that we have, which are conditioned. But the moment one starts being aware of them, which is why awareness is such a transformative power, is that it allows one to sort of notice the effect of having those states of mind. And then we're involved in that bit by bit, inch by inch process of changing, of not acting as the instinct or reaction dictates. At which point we're breaking out of our conditioning. We're becoming more unconditioned. But we have to confront the conditioning. So what you're exemplifying in your experience, yes, is the Four Noble Truths. Suffering, the cause of suffering which you've identified, yeah, and really allowing yourself to experience it and notice how unpleasant it is, not acting on it to the best of your ability. And every time you don't act on it, you're reinforcing a tendency not to indulge in it, not to get trapped into that reactive pattern. At which point you start experiencing the third noble truth, which is relief, peace, nirodha, absence of suffering. Yeah. So if we then go to the fourth noble truth, yes, we find the template, the menu of how to work through the first, second, and third noble truths. Yeah, and what does that do? It's about relationship, about how we act with others, how we speak, what we do, how we think, how we communicate, whether we practice right effort or not, which is what you're doing. You're practicing right effort. You're trying not to indulge in negative, unwholesome states of mind, cultivating good ones, practicing mindfulness. All those allow for peaceful states of mind, which allow one to dip into samadhi states, where we lose sight, lose identification with an ego, with a personality, and experience expanded consciousness, which is very, very blissful. And all of it eventually leads to realization and panya, or wisdom, and knowing, right, so this is what this is all about. And when it's all been processed and all our reactive processes have been purified, we have perfect peace. Some way to go, but it's the most valuable, useful way to spend one's life, as well as looking after one's loved ones and fulfilling all one's duties and responsibilities. But it all falls into place. So, I don't know if that answers your question. I hope it does.
A little way to go, I think.
That applies to all of us.
Thank you. No, it's hopeful. It's hopeful.
It is indeed. That's the beauty, and that's really, that hopeful aspect is what inspires our practice. Actually, is having an element of trust. It's not blind faith. It's sort of this intuitive sense that yes, things can get better. If we didn't have it, that would be really, really tragically sad. If one has no trust, no faith that things can get better, that's a recipe for deep unhappiness and depression. So cultivating and staying connected with what is good, uplifting, is really, really important. So what we expose ourselves to is so important. What television programs do we watch? What radio programs do we listen to? What books do we read? What films do we follow? It all affects us. And how much do we expose ourselves to all these inputs? Are we able to step out of it and basically give ourselves a break during the day, just 3 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and then some time in the evening or certainly in the morning, just to be quiet and just be present and create a nice environment for oneself, whether it be a little meditation spot in one's flat or house or room, with some nice pictures, nice colors, nice lighting, just to have an uplift to help inspire one in one's practice. What appeals to me about this, the way I'm speaking about it, is the simplicity of it. It doesn't have to be sort of rainbows and fireworks. We tend to often have a sort of idealized picture of what awakening is about. Awakening is about just waking up to the ordinariness of everyday life and realizing what an amazing miracle existences. All the objects that we have in our lives, and the fact that they're all alive and they're all arising in consciousness, in awareness. And when one connects with the sort of simplicity of everything, there's a lot more joy more true well-being. One probably lives a bit longer as well because there's a bit less stress. And of course, the challenging thing is other people. And as Sartre said, suffering is other people. Well, actually, other people is also an opportunity to practice together and create an uplifting, supportive, be part of a supportive community. And if we commit ourselves to sort of wholesome values, a wholesome lifestyle, that's our contribution to the world. Each one of us has a different role to play. Different fruits emerge from our conditioning. But just being truthful, being kind, being respectful, being generous, just being ordinarily good is wonderful. That's our practice, to do that to the best of our ability. Not being driven by other people's expectations of what we should or shouldn't do. If we put it into sort of psychological terms, it's a sort of process of individuation, being truly true to what is true. It means breaking out of collective thinking, recognizing collective thinking but not being dominated or controlled by it. How we spend our time, making some accommodation, obviously making compromises with other people's needs and expectations, but as an act of generosity, but not colluding in ignorant behavior. There's use of substances to change our state of mind. Very dangerous. We lose clarity. I go for a run a few times a week, and I run in a little local park. And my run just consists of doing circuits. I do 7 circuits, and I clock up just over 5 Ks. I try and do that 2 or 3 times a week. And it's really, really sometimes sad to see the detritus, the debris that people leave behind by the benches there are a few benches in this little park. It's a very nice park. People walk their dogs there. The birds, the seagulls, for some reason, I don't know why the seagulls come to a park in West London, but they seem to like flying there. But the amount of detritus and these canisters of nitrous oxide, industrial ones, and just discarded, quite large ones. They're about sort of 40 centimeters long. And to think that there are young people inhaling this stuff to have an altered state of mind experience, destroying their lives. It's tragic, absolutely tragic. Just think of all the suffering that they're creating for themselves, not only in unskillful states of mind and the behavior that might follow, but the physical damage they're doing to themselves apparently can lead to paralysis. And yet our whole society is geared around sort of substance abuse, legitimization of alcohol. We really don't want to have a police state and have prohibition, but to have it sort of so central to so much social life. Yes, people relax, feel they can communicate, but at a price. Well, breaking out of that sort of collective thinking takes courage, or a very clear idea that this isn't good for one. And suddenly one finds that one can't join in anymore in drinking alcohol, for instance. And if you're sober with a group of people who are not sober, it's really sobering when you see people sort of losing the plot and just misbehaving, and sort of think, gosh, this is crazy. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with someone who's drunk and you're sober. It's an impossible conversation because nothing lands. And sort of being social pressure. So being kind, friendly, but also firm, being very clear about one's boundaries is very, very much part of one's practice in society as a lay person. So we have our own genuine source of well-being, which is inexhaustible, always present. Always present. So, on that note, I think what we'd like to do is probably end with a little chant, because I see the time is approaching. I had two possible chants. One was the Metta Sutta, and the other one was sharing of what's the title of it again? Yes. Page 33, thank you. Verses of sharing and aspiration. How about that? We'll do that one. Page 33, if you've got a chanting book. What are we sharing? We're sharing the merit that we're being blessed by in reflecting on the bigger picture, on the true meaning of life and how to live life, informed by a tradition 2,500 years old, still existing, still communicating, still inspiring, still supporting. So let's just share whatever benefits we have gained by this evening's sharing with all those that this chant refers to. Thank you. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life, may they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana. In every kind of birth, may I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. We'll do the closing homage on page 16. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava, the Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one. Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo, the teaching so completely explained by him. Dhammam Namasami, I bow to the Dhamma. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho, the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well. Sangham Namami, I bow to the Sangha. I'd like to thank Martin. Thank you for doing the screen sharing.
Thank you very much, Nick, for your teaching.
Thank you all for joining. I hope you're able to join next week. Martin will be taking next week's class. That's great. And yes, I'd like to wish you all a nice, happy, relaxing evening, good night's sleep, and a good week ahead.